Today I have with me Kelly Howard on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about Kelly. I know you're going to enjoy this discussion as much as I'm going to enjoy recording it. Kelly Howard is the fitness consistency expert with a touch of adventure and the author of Fit, Active and Ageless for Life. For over 25 years, Kelly has helped thousands of women prioritize their fitness so they can feel great and have more fun in the second half of life. She invites women to adventure out of their comfort zones by trying new experiences they may have only dreamt of previously. Her Fit is Freedom podcast, coaching, online courses, her retreats, all of these things have changed the lives of thousands of women. She's a frequent guest on podcasts and television and is the creator of the Fox TV Outdoor Houston Adventure Series. She currently calls Houston, Texas home, but can often be found kayaking rivers and traveling trails worldwide. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I really want to dive a little bit into your book and the content that's so good. I've been reading through, and I think the listeners will take away a lot of gems, a lot of helpful information, especially around consistency. I really like that you hit on that. But first, I always like to find out, I find that all of us in fitness, health, we have some kind of story, something that brought us here. Do
Right?
you do you have a story or something that propelled you into fitness?
I do. I have way too many stories, but I will say that um, I've always been relatively active. Like that was kind of my thing. And there was, I don't know, I'm going to have to go back and make up the date, but maybe 20 years ago, I bought this company, a company, and it was an outdoor adventure club doing things that I didn't normally do. Like back then, I was a long distance skater and a sailor, and just that was the stuff I did. So I had to learn how to do all these things, like the long distance cycling and the hiking and the backpacking. I'm like doing everything I can and staying one step ahead of everybody that works or that is a member. And so I'm that person at the time who's telling everyone that they have to be in shape to be able to do these things. Need to be taking care of themselves. They need to be, working on their mobility and all that, their strength and everything. But on the behind the scenes, I am working like way too many hours. I'm caring for my ailing mother. I'm doing all the things. And one morning I woke up and I couldn't get out of bed. Like I was in so much pain. I, you know, I don't know if you're like me, but my first thing is like, I'm Googling, like, am I dying? Right.
Yeah.
I do not know what's wrong with me, but I'm in big trouble. And literally crawl to the bathroom to pee, crawl back to bed, and realized you know, after I came to my senses that there was nothing wrong with me except that I hadn't been taking care of my body the way I needed to be taking care of my body. I was taking care of the body that was be 20 years old instead of at that time I think I was 50. So it made me also realize that all of my friends were doing the same thing. Like we were all doing the same thing. Like we're running companies and we're caring for kids and we're caring for families and we're caring for parents and we're just burning ourselves out. And that was the beginning of what I do now. It took me a long time to I actually sold that company and started this one. But in that whole period of time, I really got to understand that if I'm not taking care of this body, it's just not going to be able to do what it used to do. And you know this, right? Like we both know this. We all know this, but we want to think that we can get away with not doing it.
That's so true. I hear this from a lot of women, and I live the same thing, particularly in my 40s, taking care of two ailing parents. And my father lived with us. I was his caretaker. He had cancer, so I was dealing with hospice. And I had three young kids. And I've always referred to this as the sandwich generation because you're just kind of smushed between these two
You are.
generations as a caregiver. And then if you're working at the same time or running a company or whatever you're doing, it's burnout. It's I often feel that my autoimmune stemmed partially from that period of time, the autoimmune I developed later on, a combination of poor nutrition, not caring for myself, overexercising, and then that stress. And
And then the stress.
right,
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and I'm kind of going off topic here for a second, but what happened during the pandemic was really difficult, right? And I think the gold lining on that one is that people suddenly started realizing how much stress really does. Like, it puts the weight on and it wears us out and it makes us, things that might have been small bloom, the bad stuff, not the good stuff.
right.
And it's kind of interesting because stress is so tough.
Very tough. I had a biologist on that she works in the field of epigenetics, which for the listener, you've got genetics like, okay, I've inherited my hair color, my eye color, whatever. And then we can have a propensity toward certain diseases or cancers based on genetics. But epigenetics basically refers to the role of the environment kind of pulling the trigger on that gene. It doesn't have to express itself. And I asked her, I said, "What do you think the biggest factor is with a gene expressing itself or an illness expressing itself?" And she said, "Oh, that's stress." Right? Easy. That's stress.
Isn't
And
that
that made
amazing?
really made an impact on me.
And it's so cool. Like right now, we're kind of, I wouldn't say we're on the cutting edge, but we're on that place where people 20 years behind us or 20 years in the future are going to be like, well, of course that's the way it is.
Mhm.
You know, of course you can turn off genes and turn on genes. And it's so interesting, like everything that's going on right now and the
It
knowledge
is.
that we're gaining.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I feel like we are kind of right on the edge of a whole world opening up, especially in the field of longevity and health
Hmm.
span. We're really seeing that beginning to emerge and the research coming along. But it takes so long for the research to be accepted in the medical community. We're talking decades before it's finally
Right.
accepted as okay, yes, this is the standard. And we're always lagging a little bit behind. So it's
Hmm.
just interesting to live now. And now in your book, and I really love this, you talk about the consistency killers. And now I agree 100%, consistency is key. You can hand somebody the best nutrition plan, the best workout plan, and I've had this experience, but if they don't implement, it does no good. It's
Isn't
nothing.
that, yeah. Yeah. It's, and that lack of follow through. I had somebody that I was with me on a retreat just recently, and she said to me, she went, when you said, I don't care if you only do it for 10 minutes, but just do it for 10 minutes and, put it on your schedule and say you're going to do it and do it. She's like, I just thought that was baloney. And what she realized was that just by starting that consistent habit, then that 10 minutes turned into 20 minutes, turned into 30 minutes, turned into her having a blast on this trip when both of us going into it, I wasn't sure if she was going to be able to do the trip. So it's really like I love that that works. And the killers, the killers are, that's a high level word, right? It's a tough word, but they all play on us, right? Like, is there a particular one that you like best or that you dislike best or out of the killers?
Um, I think for me, what really stood out was the all or nothing mindset because I am consistently talking about that with clients because I see it with women. I didn't used to see it so much when I worked with men. For whatever reason, I did not see this, but it's kind of rolled into the perfectionism where
Yeah.
if I can't do all of the things and check all of the boxes and do them perfectly, well, to heck with it. I'm going to eat the whole bag of cookies or whatever it
Right.
is.
And and it's one of those things, like, I caught myself yesterday, and this had to do with work, but it was the same thing. Like, my thought was, "Well, if you're not gonna get that right, then maybe you shouldn't even be doing that because, I mean, because you're a slacker and right, and you're just not good enough to finish that." And the truth is that I finished it. I did it. It wasn't great, but it led to me being able to do something today that was like done. And
Yes.
same thing happens, right? And you're right. Like guys in general, I'll just do a mass thing about guys. They don't have that. And I don't know why, but as women, we do tend to have that all or nothing. Like, you either have to do it all right or you might as well just throw in the towel.
Yes.
And
Yes, it's how we're wired. I think part of it is we are the caregivers and we have children and we take care of ailing parents. And this is requires a lot. It does require not perfectionism when it comes to parenting because there's no such thing, but you got to be on it. Like
yeah,
you got to be aware and on it. And so that skill set, that's just my personal, there's no research to back that up.
no, I
Just my
like that though.
personal feeling on the perfectionism that it's kind of tied into that motherhood and caregiving because I
Yeah.
know my husband he we own a company. I'm not active in his company, but he goes out and he has good days, he has bad days. He doesn't let something going wrong completely derail him, and I know in the past it really would have bothered me a lot. Now, having my own podcast business, doing Facebook lives has taught me
Right?
it's okay to be
Every day's a new day.
the dog barks in the middle of your recording, the Wi-Fi goes out. I mean, I've had everything, mic
Right?
issues. And so you're just like, well, okay, you get past it. And that's taught me a lot. I know.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge one. It's just figuring out that it, like one of the things that I love the most is having that plan, right? Like you already said, you put a plan together, and then being willing to just hit 80% of it. And the reason I think you have to have a plan is that otherwise it's just like, yeah, it's whatever happens and you don't have that clarity. That clarity is so important. But then if you can just hit 80% of it, now I am preaching to myself at the moment too, because I know there are a lot of times when if I'm not like on my plan perfectly, there's that voice back in the head going, well, you forgot to do X. And you know what? We just have to let ourselves have a little grace.
Oh, absolutely. So important. I know. I catch myself too. I'll be driving back from the gym going, I didn't do my glute kickbacks. I mean, something as totally
Right?
ridiculous as glute kickbacks,
There
and it
was
will
a
bug
point,
me.
right? Gotten home and I would have done those darn
Oh, yeah.
kickbacks, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, just give it a rest, Kelly."
Oh, yeah. Tomorrow's another day. You'll do the glute kickbacks. Then I know I've had women tell me I went home and did the exercise I didn't do at the gym because I ran out of time,
Yeah.
whether it's, sit-ups or whatever it is. Now, in your book, you also talk about the Fitness Northstar. Can you explain that to the listeners?
Yeah. So and this kind of falls for, I would say I'm just gonna be really super general, but women who are maybe, let's say late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that kind of thing. We grew up in a time frame where it was all about how we looked and what we weighed, right?
Right.
Like it was just
Hmm.
like the scale was the god in the bathroom. And the problem is that if you only go to that, one, our bodies change, right? Like our composition changes, and so our weight changes, everything changes, right? But the other piece is that it's just no fun, right? Like it is
Right.
just no fun trying to always like lose the weight or fit into the jeans or whatever it is, like that feeling that that we grew up with, which is this is what we're supposed to be. And when we can dig deeper and go, what will being fit really do for me? Like I always like to ask that question. Somebody, if I start working with someone, I'll be like, so what are your goals? And usually it's something like, well, because they know me. I want to go with you on a retreat, and I'd like to lose 20 pounds. I'm like, great. Let's talk about the 20 pounds for a second. What will losing 20 pounds do for you? And there's always that stumped moment. And that stumped moment is, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And instead, if you have a North Star and you know that North Star is, what will that do for me? Like, I always want to keep asking, what will that do for you? What will that do for you? So, losing the 20 pounds, well, it'll give me more energy, right? So, what will that do for you? Well, I'll be able to, play with the kids, or I'll be able to do the thing that I want to do, or whatever it is. Or it'll get, just you keep asking that question, what will that do for you? And all of a sudden you get to a place where you're like, hey, this is for me, right? It's not for, I mean, all those things are important. I am definitely not immune to how I look at all. But it's not just that. It's like, for me, I'll use my North Star. My North Star is I want to be able to do everything I love doing for as long as I possibly can. And what's that going to do for me? Oh, it's going to give me friendship. It's going to give me, a body that helps me through life instead of hinders me through life. It's going to give me the longevity until I'm just not here anymore, right? All of those things matter. And it's going to also be able to take care of the people in your family. Because a lot of times people will be like, well, a North Star, being able to do things you want to do, that would be nice, but that's kind of selfish, quite frankly, Kelly. And I think it's the most unselfish thing you can do, because then the people in your family aren't caring for you when you're no longer, your body's not doing what it should be doing. So that, like, I can get pretty excited about a North Star. And we've got lots of them, really. I don't think there's like one single North Star, but for each of us, there's that series of things that really light us up. And when you can find the
Oh,
thing that gets you going,
hmm,
then, all of the stuff that follows is so easy. You know, following your plan that you give to your clients, right? Following that plan becomes a simple thing because they know that that plan is going to get them to their North Star.
yes. And the North Star can change as
It
you
does
move
change.
through life. It has for me in my
Mhm.
40s, it was all about marathons and running. That's what
Yep.
I love to do. Then in my 50s, it was all about competing on into my 60s in bodybuilding. And now it's much like yours. I want to be able to do this a long time. I'm very focused on health, longevity, quality of life, health span, all of those things. It's something I've really seen a lot is women are not that focused on the health aspect, which is so interesting to me. They're really focused on the belly fat and the aesthetics and what they're seeing in the mirror. And that health piece typically comes later. I'm going to say, well, for me, I turned 60 and went, oh, wow, okay. I just had an entirely different perspective on fitness and health.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, now you've been in the industry where, man, I mean, I bow to you because I don't know how you did the industry where it is how you look, right? Like, you're on stage, and it's a big deal. Like, everything is there to be seen. And I think that bodybuilders are stinking amazing. Like, amazing. And I don't have it in me to, like, ever try that. But then, you do that and it's such a great star. Like, literally, you're winning awards all over the world, right? And then there's that shift. And like you said, it's that for right now, that shift for you is shift to health. I think for me, it probably happened earlier because I watched a mother who was extraordinarily healthy, um, fall, have a stroke, fall, be in a wheelchair. And all of a sudden I went, whoa, that's that's my lineage right there. I need to
Wow.
do something about this because I have no children. So there's nobody that's gonna be taking care of me in that wheelchair.
Wow. That was a realization for you. And I've heard other women say that I had or have a client, I should say. And for her, it was watching a mother get Alzheimer's very early
Oh
in
gosh.
life. I think I'm wanting to say, I don't want to misquote it, but maybe 50, very,
Oh,
very early,
man.
maybe even before that. And so that can make such an impression on the daughter who's then going, "Oh, wow." Like you said, there's my genetic background. I better do
Right?
something about this. I better do everything I can that this won't happen to me. I was very blessed. My parents lived, very long lives and didn't have chronic illnesses or anything like that until the very, very end. My father had the cancer. So I think I felt kind of invincible because everyone in
Oh,
my
yeah.
family, living these long lives. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go, 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 and nothing's going to stop. And so it took me a little longer to wake up to it.
Yeah. Well, and you've done an amazing job of doing all the things that you need to do, like running when you're a little bit younger and then lifting and then shifting again. Uh, That's to me the perfect path, really.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
learn a lot about yourself. I'm sure now you're into the adventure. How has that served you, served your clients? What have you learned about yourself in the process of, and maybe
Oh,
tell us what these adventures are?
sure. No, no, that's a great story. So for myself, it became something that, well, I'll put it this way. I always like to push people out of their comfort zone. I'll go back to a long time ago. I don't know what that long time ago is. Probably about 20 years ago or more. And I was reading this article about a whitewater kayaker. And I said to my partner, I went, wow, if I was younger, this is something I'd really like to have learned, right? Like, but at that time, I'm already thinking that I'm too darn old for it. And then literally about 6 weeks later, one of my members of my company went, hey, there's this whitewater kayaking class. Do you want to go? And I was like, "Sure, that sounds awesome." Well, it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done in my life. Like, I mean, it was just like the worst. I was claustrophobic and I didn't swim, and I am in this little boat and I'm flipped over and I'm just like, I mean,
Oh,
I am out of my brain with fear. And it also I went, "Whoa, that's something that I can't do." And I got excited because most things I could do, right? So it just got me excited. So I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And what I realized was that every time it pushed me harder, further out of my comfort zone, I never came back to the person I was before. And it allowed me to do a lot of other things in life, right? Like just like take chances that I wouldn't normally take. So I don't drag my women out on whitewater kayaking trips.
I was wondering about that.
Right. I just don't. Although if anybody's listening, that happened to be with me on my last trip. We did get on a whitewater river, but we were kind of in duckies, but it was moving faster than I had told him it was moving. So we had to switch out and we got him into the raft. But it was funny because everybody afterwards was like, oh my gosh, you lied to us. That was like really terrifying. I'm like, would you do it again? They're like, yes, we'll do it again. And that's what I'm always looking for is like, what gets people excited? And then when you use adventure, it does a few things. One of them is it creates camaraderie because all of those people, like I just came back. Okay, I just came back from the Smoky Mountains maybe a week ago, and I had 10 women with me. They didn't know each other going there. At the end, they were literally soul sisters. They helped each other on all these hikes that we did. Some of them were harder than others, and everybody was there to cheer each other on. And when we have that camaraderie, it just It well, I mean, all of us have heard about the blue zones now, right? That's one of the blue zone pieces is community. And when we have that camaraderie in that community, it just like it just lights you up and it gives you a desire to keep going, right? Like finding new things. Like no one on that trip, when I sent out a little email afterwards, not one single person said, "Thanks, I'm done." Every one of them said, "When's the next one?" Right?
Oh, wow, that's
And
awesome.
I love that. Like, I just love seeing people do things they don't think they can do. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to generalize again, but it's, usually the women that I'm working with are 40s, 50s, 60s, right? And most of us spend our whole life taking care of everyone else. And we never did do that that hike or that backpack or that trip or whatever that, I have a client who every year she did all the dehydrated food for her husband and her son's backpacking trip. And I said, "Well, when are you going to go?" She's like, "Ugh, I could never do that." And of course, that's the first thing I want to hear. I'm like, "Yeah, you can." And she
Hmm.
did. She did the next year. So it just like it's a game shifter. It just changes our perspective.
It totally does. And whatever that hard thing is, it's going to look a little bit different, or challenging thing, I should say, for each one of us. I know getting on stage was terrifying for me because
Right?
I am not a stage person. People think I am because I do the podcast and all of the things. And I'm like, oh no, I am a stay at home, read a book, introvert. Let me go into my introvert cave. I am not a
Right.
stage person. But what we learn, we do something we think we can't do, and we learn we can do these other difficult things that might not even have anything to do with fitness. It might be a career change. It might be
Yes.
somebody needs to leave a toxic relationship. It could be just any number of things that you teach yourself, you teach your brain, yes, I can do some difficult, scary things.
Yeah. I guess getting strong makes you strong,
It
like
does.
across the board.
It does.
Yeah.
And we've lost that in our culture. I feel human beings were meant to move. We're
Mhm.
built to move, and we're meant to do some hard things that build resiliency instead of always avoiding what is the most difficult path.
Yes. Yes. And, on this last trip, we did 2 hikes that were, mm, they were difficult, right? I mean, I felt them. And what was so cool is that nobody on that trip would have tried it before. But then when they did it, even even though they were supposed to have been training, I don't think any of them had tried that kind of hike. When they did do it, they were just like, "Wow, look what I can do." And it's exactly what you said. You never go back to that person you were before.
Hmm. It
Yeah.
changes you. Now, have you ever, and this is going to sound like such an odd question, but it just occurred to me. Have you ever had somebody just kind of freak out on any of these and just be like, oh, I can't, like in the middle of,
Um,
I'm thinking of the first time I zip lined and how
oh my
hard that, how I wanted to go back down the stairs, but there were people behind me, that feeling like, okay, what did I sign up for? I don't like heights.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of heights either. I'll do the zip line just because I feel like, well, I brought everybody out here. I need to go do it, but like not my favorite thing. But I have had that happen to people on rivers because rivers are probably one of the like on a hike. I always set the hikes up so that I bring somebody with me who can sweep and make sure that if we need to, somebody can go out and they're taken care of. But sometimes on rivers, you're putting together like and when I say rivers, like moving rivers, like on a flat river or on a stand-up paddleboard flat, I've never had any problems, but on a moving river, sometimes people are like, "Wait, I'm in over my head." And you get that feeling like, "I'm gonna drown." Even though, like, we're wearing the best gear in the world and we're not gonna drown. But yeah, I mean, that's happened a couple of times, but I have learned you always have to have that option, like putting people into a raft and getting them out of a ducky or, whatever it is. Um, Costa Rica, we have a Costa Rica trip coming up and I had somebody one time go, "You know what? I can't raft." And that was the only way out. And I said, "You know what? Yes, you can. You can, and I'm gonna
Oh
hold your hand
no.
and we're gonna do it." And at the end, she was having a blast. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I know that fear comes up. Like it does.
Overwhelming. It can be
Yeah,
overwhelming.
it
And
can
and of
be
course it's
overwhelming.
our brain going, I've got to keep you safe. I got to keep you safe. And you talking
Exactly.
about the river, we were hiking in Vallecito and they had a lot of rain prior. And boy, the river that normally it's more of a creek. You just walk across this thing. Oh no, it was full on. raging, and we did not have the gear, so we didn't do it. But I just remember looking at that and the feeling and hearing the sound of the
Yeah.
water and how powerful that is, and feeling the fear even just watching someone
Just
else traverse across it.
right. It's interesting, but I mean, you're right. Our brains are designed to keep us safe, and safe
Yes.
can be all different things.
Yes, absolutely. All different things. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit to maintenance. And this is something I've seen, and you've probably seen it too. When somebody has this big goal, and this has happened to me, big bodybuilding show, it's almost easier to follow the plan. Like you said, you got your North Star. Here you go. You're doing all the things, you're checking the boxes. Everything's great. You feel motivated. Then maybe the thing passes or you reach the goal and you have to step back and go into a maintenance phase. I personally found that the hardest part of competing was the months in between where you had to maintain and not maintain low body fat because that was
Right.
not a healthy thing to do, but you're kind of in this limbo where you're not your leanest and you're not looking shredded and you're not having that visual motivation of looking in the mirror. Maybe to me I felt like I was a little fluffy, I had a little more body fat on, and I was in this kind of maintenance grow mode. I found that very, very challenging. Have you found the same to be true?
Oh, yeah. It's like it's maintenance and rest, right? It's same thing. Like if you just during the week when you have a rest day,
Oh
once
yes.
some right? Once somebody starts getting really consistent with me, they don't wanna do those rest days. Like, they're positive that one rest day is gonna be, it's gonna all crumble, right? And trying to convince somebody that resting is good, trying to convince myself that resting is good. It's a thing, right? Like, I have to have the conversation with myself every time. And maintenance is the same way because you can't always be building. Like, our bodies aren't maybe if you're 18 or 20 or a certain
Right.
a certain point, you can do it, but you can't always be building because right now our bodies are in recovery. And maintenance, I think, is the mind game. It is 100%. You got to get the mind game, and it works the same thing like when you get an injury, right? Because you're doing all your stuff and you're doing amazing, and then all of a sudden the injury happens, and you have to stop. And I don't even know if I put this in the book, but I cannot tell you how many times people have called me sobbing, like sobbing. And I'll be like, okay, um, so what happened and how long ago was it? Because it's usually like something happened 6 weeks ago. So for 6 weeks, they've held it together. And now all of a sudden, their brain is, absolutely, there's no more happy endorphins going on. And now it's like my life is ruined because I can't do the things I was going to do. And it's a mind game. I mean, that's when maintenance, rest, injury, those are all the times when we have to really, really lean on what we've learned, on our coach like what she tells us, and trust that we're gonna come back, because we don't believe
Yes.
we will.
Yes. I'm really glad you brought that up because injury is not something I talk about a lot on my show. I've talked about my back injuries in the past and what that was like, but I haven't really dove into that whole mindset of how you're feeling as you can't do the thing. I mean, with back injury, I was like I couldn't do anything. Couldn't do upper
Right.
body, couldn't drive the car, couldn't do
Couldn't
anything.
do the arms. Yeah.
Oh boy. And I had to find other ways to keep my mind active because, some depression can set in,
Oh, yeah.
some sense of failure. Then you think, am I going to be stuck this way the rest of my life?
Right.
And I
This
never
is
do.
what
Yeah,
the rest of my life looks like.
because it
Yeah,
can
right?
feel that way. You injure a knee, you injure your back, you injure your shoulder. It can feel permanent, and especially as we're older and it takes longer. It takes longer
It
to
does.
come back from that and to
Yeah.
heal. And the first time I injured my back, it was so bad because I kept trying to work through the injury,
Right.
knowing better. I mean, I
Right. Of
knew
course.
better. I told my clients differently. I kept
Sorry.
I
I
know,
know.
I
Like
know.
mom, right? Do as
Yeah,
I
like
say, not as
mom.
I do.
And boy, did it backfire. The second time it happened, I knew, and I went straight down, okay, rest, heat, ice, all the things. I just didn't even fight it. But that first
Yeah.
time was so bad because I kept lifting,
Yeah.
not realizing how much damage I was doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, injuries are those things that nobody wants to talk about, but I get in people's faces about it because, like, I have injured everything. Like, I don't think there's anything left on me that I haven't done something to somewhere along the way. And I know what it's like. Like, I just I know. And it's a tough one. And then in the very back of our heads, back there in that little piece of the brain that we don't want to acknowledge, there's a clock running. And that clock is like, "Oh, well." I mean, for me, it's like, "Hmm, so what am I? I'm 63 now. You're 63. Is this it? Is this all you're gonna do? Is this the end of your life? Right? Are you ever gonna heal?" And it's so hard. But that's when we have to come back to all the things that we talked about, right? Like meditating and resting and self-care and just, the things journaling. Can't tell you how many of my clients have said, "I'm not gonna journal." And now they're like little journaling ninjas, and
It works.
it works,
Journaling works. Yes.
right? Especially when things aren't working.
I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I went through a lot of therapy, worked with a therapist. I still do meet with her weekly. And one of the tools we use, we're not using it so much anymore, but to get breakthroughs, we used journaling. She had me journaling. I fought her. I did not want to do that. And she had me doing timelines and the whole bit. I cannot tell you how much that helped me and brought
Yeah,
me to such a sense of awareness. There were moments I just looked down at that page and went, oh, huge aha moments, seeing things out on paper and then also breaking through limiting self beliefs. It's so helpful
right.
with that because
Yeah,
you see it. You see what you're doing. You can see in the moment, okay, I've invented this whole story around this and it's not even true. And I do
yeah.
believe journaling can give that awareness.
I do too, and since you're an author, I guess you have to journal in some degree.
You do, and I don't really, it's not my thing. It was never my thing as a
Sure.
kid. I had diaries that I would start to fill out and never, the old diary days with key and the whole
Right?
I'll date myself here. I don't even know if they make those anymore. But yeah, there's just so much benefit to that, and meditating, prayer, whatever it looks
Mhm.
like for that person. Just again, that gives us awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And that's I it right? I think that in the end, that's everything that we need. Because if we're aware, then it's the North Star and it's the having fun and it's the finding the things that make you feel good and, knowing when to slow down and know when to speed up and
Right. So
yeah.
talking about the adventures again, I'm
Okay.
really stuck on those. I love the idea of adventure. You are planning these retreats. Someone wants to go on the retreat. How do you train them? What kind of training do you give them to prepare them both physically and mentally for what lay ahead?
That's a good one. So, I have something called, Adventure Fit, okay? And Adventure Fit is literally a training plan. It's a 3-month training plan with, maintenance, right? Which you have to have the maintenance program, and then a little bit in there about, dealing with hills and heat, because a lot of people, like this last summer, you too, I'm sure, it was a little toasty, hard to train, but I
Mm.
have that plan for them. And then each of the trips that we do, I give them a pretty good idea of what we're looking at. I let them know if I think that it's a good trip for them. Like, every so often, I'll be like, "I'm not sure this is the right trip for you. Like, come do this instead." And so and then as far as the training goes, like, that's the physical part of it. And the physical part of it is that I mean, you know this one, you were a runner, so I'm always trying to get people to go up to like that 1 hour mark and then dial it back and let's do some resistance. Most everybody I end up working with, we all end up kind of like a cardio addict is what I call it. Um,
Mhm.
that one. And so it's getting people to dial back from all the cardio and using strength and mobility because those matter so much in whatever we're doing. And then from there, the mindset comes in the group calls. So we do group calls 2 or 3 times a month. It allows people to meet each other, allows people to hear what's going on with everybody else. It also allows people to see what's going on. Going back to the injury, like right now, I'm getting ready to take a group to Costa Rica, and one of my like star women has now hurt her knee, and she's dealing for the first time in her life with an injury. Like she hadn't really exercised her whole life, and then she got serious and just like was a goddess. And now her knee's like, hey, you know what? I'm not happy right now. So getting her through that really helps with not just what I have to say, but with what everybody else has to say. Because generally speaking, everybody's been through it at some point. Not necessarily knee, it could be, the hip or the neck or the arm or doesn't matter, right? And so that's part of where the mindset comes from. And then the other piece of that is that I do have an online component where I have lots of, you know, too much Kelly is what I call it, too much Kelly talking, and lots of stuff that they can listen to. Like if they're not feeling motivated or if they feel like, they don't have the accountability they need or, whatever it is, they can just kind of dial it in. Or mindset piece, I send them to people like you. I'm like, you listen to this podcast. When you're working out, I want you to listen to Carol because this is going to be what keeps you on track. Because it's so easy to slip off track.
Very easy. I love the advice with the podcast. That's been my personal method of
Hmm.
keeping myself motivated. I put on things that, and I listen to a few mindless like crime shows or something because I like to listen to crime shows. But I love motivational podcasts, podcasts on health, on fitness, where I'm learning, where I'm actively learning business. I'll listen to business podcasts.
Hmm.
And that's been a huge part of my staying motivated and uplifted and in the zone. And
Yeah.
I do the same. I'll recommend podcasts to my clients as well because it's just something about having that in your ear, even as you're walking outside or, you're doing your cardio or even at the gym. Just always have something in my ear. Such good
Yeah.
advice. Really good
It's
advice.
it's interesting because we didn't have podcasts before. I guess we had Audible books, right? And I used to be I go back so far. I used to buy the cassettes, and listen to the books on cassettes. Um, and but the truth is that it got me to run, right? Listening to I don't know who, Deepak Chopra on cassette. I don't know. That'd be kind of slow for running, but somebody, right? And in all my life, I've found that there's a lot of coaches out there. It's not just us, or it's not just having that one-on-one coach. It's that all the books and the everybody that's out there that helps. And
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
It's like having many, many coaches.
it
And now
is.
we have this whole world open to us where we can just search and find, okay, do we need spiritual motivation? Do we need
Mhm.
meditation? What do we need? And it's just right there. It's just amazing. Now
Yeah.
there was one question I want to actually meant to ask this sooner. Y- Have you had, we are talking about this whole deal of consistency and the all or nothing and all of the things women do kind of self sabotage their fitness journey. Have you had a fitness failure? And now that word to me is like, I never think of failures. I think, okay, opportunity to learn. What did I learn from that? But I know how women think. They go on a weight loss journey and maybe they lose a couple of pounds, gain back 4, or they lose the weight, gain it all back and then some, and they consider themselves a failure. I think a lot of people now come into fitness looking for coaches, and they've got it in the back of their mind, oh, I failed in the past. Have
Right.
you
I've tried
ever?
everything and nothing worked. I've failed
Right,
at it all. Yes.
right.
Yeah. So I would say my biggest flop is when the pandemic started. So like literally I was so I'm in Houston. Houston, is a big city. I'm not big on paying attention to news. Like truthfully, not big on the news. So I'm out doing a week-long trip with some girlfriends. We're doing long distance cycling every day. So every day we're out cycling and then we come back to our B&B, the TV doesn't get turned on. We're just like having fun and hanging out and like I am on top of my game. I get back to Houston. Houston has like shut down the rodeo, which is like the biggest deal in the world in Houston. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on? And then the gym shuts down, everything shuts down, right? And so now I suddenly start paying attention to what's happening. To deal with the stress, my way of handling it in my cardio addiction was to just start going long. And long for me was I would go on 3, 4, 5 hour bike rides. I would go on 2, 3, 4 hour hikes, right? Not going to the gym and now suddenly consuming all this news. What happened? Well, you know what happened. I lost muscle like a crazy woman and I couldn't get my stress under control. Like I was just, I was just not doing what I told people to do. Like bottom line, I wasn't following my own advice. And so it was a good, I would say probably 8 months. I shouldn't admit it, but it was probably 8 months before finally I just like dialed everything back and went, okay, Cal, let's talk about let's talk about what you're doing to your body right now. And that was probably my biggest fail because even though I had the knowledge, I couldn't at the time allow myself the breath to just, step back, journal, meditate, pray, go short on my cardio. Instead, I was just like, this crazy woman, like a rat on a literally, a hamster wheel, just running for hours. And so, yeah, I would say that I'm still recovering from in a lot of ways because it was just an interesting fail for me.
It
Uh,
was a hard time. I mean, in the
yeah.
beginning, we didn't even know what this thing was. Or we were doing things like spraying down mail with Lysol and
You're right.
wiping everything. I mean, all the crazy stuff I did, and then we were told, oh no, you don't have to do that, it's not necessary. After doing it for months, it was stressful. I remember having Zoom consultations with women at the time. It was not uncommon for people to just burst into tears and
Oh yeah.
completely melt down in these sessions. It was hard on people.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like, okay, we've lived through a worldwide pandemic. We have to give ourselves a little bit of grace and say, you know what,
Right?
you're a badass. You just lived through a worldwide
That's exactly right.
pandemic and it's still going on. And we were in shutdown mode, and it was it was shocking. It was so sudden. There was no time to prepare. People lost jobs. They were home, maybe, drinking too much alcohol or eating too much
Oh
or
yeah.
not
Yeah, yeah.
moving.
I did that too.
All of the things, all
I
of the
forgot that
things
one.
that we did. Oh my
I was part of
goodness.
the bubble.
But then, like I said, a part of me is it's not a fail. What I'm saying is it's a learning experience, and then giving ourselves that grace to go, you know what, we went through a tough time. We didn't do the best with our health during that time, but now we know better and we've come out the other side. And so
Right.
finding that I guess silver lining, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, and so much knowledge, right? Like I personally learned so much about bodies, right?
Yes.
Because my entire life I've gone to the gym. Like I was that girl at 18, the only person in the gym or in the free weights side. And, I've just always done it. I've never been a super bodybuilder, but I've always gone to the gym. And so I just assumed that my muscles were a given. It was just
Oh.
who I was, right?
Mhm.
And then when you suddenly take that out and suddenly start doing all the cardio, then it shifted my body and it was kind of interesting. So I learned a lot. Yeah,
Mhm.
I did. I
Yes.
came out the other side going, okay, I know a whole lot more than I did before.
Yeah, you know what doesn't work and what doesn't work for
Yeah.
you and what's better for your body and the effect of lifting or resistance training on your muscle and on your body. So, and I know for me during that time, I dove into a lot about the immune system. So I learned a lot of things during that period of time just to keep my mind off of, because I'm like you, I don't like to have the news on. And my brother was staying with us at the time, and he's one to listen to the news 24.
Right.
So I couldn't get away from it. So I'm hearing all this stuff as I'm moving around the house going, "Oh, rescue me." So that was
Yeah.
how I got my mind off of things. Well,
Oh,
Kelly,
good for you.
I want to be respectful of your time. As we wrap up, was there something I didn't ask that you would like the listeners to know? And how can they find your book, work with you, go on one of these amazing retreats?
Okay, let's see. Probably the only thing that I would like to circle back to, because we both talked about it, but we didn't like go, this is a golden rule. You've got to have a plan. And whether that plan is from someone like you who, says this is what you need to do, or something that you go through the book and you pick out some ideas for a plan. If you don't have a plan, you don't have clarity. So, and that plan doesn't have to be anything big. It really doesn't have to be anything big. It can be like 3 days a week, a little mobility and a little walking and a little resistance. It doesn't matter. But if you've got a plan, then it leads to more always. And if you're after that perfection, just drop it. just don't listen to us about, when we had the perfection in our head. Just don't do the perfection because it doesn't work. And then the other thing is just have fun, right? We've all spent so much time caring for everybody else and doing all the stuff, and that awareness of the world where we're taking care of everyone else. It's time for some fun. Find something that is just fun to you. Doesn't have to be fitness, just fun, and do it. It just, when we're having fun, everything else gets easier every time.
Yes, so
Yeah.
good. So
And then
good.
as far as finding me, the easiest way, I just send everybody to the website, which is just fitisfreedom.com. It's FIT is freedom.com. And you can find the book and you can find the retreats and connect with me if you've got questions. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank
Uh, to,
you.
to the listeners, be sure to grab Kelly's book. I'm in the process of reading through it, and she has a lot of journal prompts, exercises. So she's not just throwing, do's and don'ts at you. She's actually walking you through how you can get consistent and how you can avoid some of the traps that we fall into as women. So do pick up that book and look into one of her retreats. And thank you so much, Kelly. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Ah, thank you, Carol, and thank you to everybody listening. Truly appreciate it.
And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.